Monsta Creepypasta.
I never once believed that beings from another world existed, and I would roll my eyes at the people who claimed to have seen or been in contact with something from outer space. The thoughts of aliens zipping through time or teleporting from one planet to ours using highly sophisticated spaceships seemed to be absurd, and only something that would be found in a fake Hollywood movie. But things would change for me when I was just 24 years old back in 1975, when me and my father was camping out one night in the deep woods of Minnesota, which is where my life would change drastically. It was Saturday night, I believe around 9 o'clock, when me and my dad were just getting ready for bed after putting out our bonfire. I remember my dad handed me my rifle right before we got into our separate tents, as he told me to keep it close since there were wild animals around like black bears and sometimes cougars. So I grabbed my gun from my dad and climbed into my tent, where I dozed off immediately after laying down, due to us hunting all day and coming up empty-handed. I guess it was the walking that took a chunk of my energy away and had me pass right out once I put my head down. And I believe I slept for a good 4 hours before my eyes would pop open after hearing my dad shouting my name, which was accompanied by sounds of animals running by our campsite and right past our tents. And as I climbed out and stood next to my father, we would both witness a pack of deers rushing by us as if a predator was after them. But when we seen what it was that had them so terrified, made us scared for our lives as well. First we would hear a very loud humming sound, as vibration began to shake our bodies vibrantly, as a UFO the size of a semi-truck with a trailer attached to it would appear directly over us, where there was a gap in the trees. And that was the second everything went black for me, and the last thing I remember was my dad's voice screaming my name. When I woke up, I was in an unknown room, with walls made out of some type of metal that had very weird vein-like tubes running up and down it, as if it was a living organism or something. And the only thing that was in the room was the bed I laid on nude. But the room wasn't what concerned me at the time. It was the fact that half of my head was shaved on the right side, where a long surgical cut had appeared, along with my stomach feeling queasy as if I were sick with the flu. In my head at that moment, I figured I was at someone's cabin or something, and didn't put two and two together that something was clearly wrong with the environment around me, and never would I have guessed that I was no longer in Minnesota. Well, that would change quickly once the sliding metal door opened up as a grayish-looking man with long blonde hair and who wore some type of unique-looking robe walked through it, where he would begin to speak to me telepathically. And being I was weak and could barely move, I just sat there frightened, but listening to him as he said to me that I had a brain tumor forming in my head and a stomach ulcer I did not know I had. But they have cured me of both illnesses and that I will now be fine. I couldn't find the courage to speak to the man. I just slowly nodded my head in agreement as I kept a worried look on my face, still not sure if I was in danger or not. But comfort would be brought to me in the form of my father, who another one of those beings led into the room, which let me know that we both were okay. But the story my dad told me of how we got to this place was one that caught me off guard. As my dad handed me my clothes to put on, he would say to me that we were on a UFO with actual space aliens who had abducted us in order to save my life, and we are now going to their planet that us humans call Venus, which is where they are able to heal me faster. And with a smile of excitement on my father's face, he would say to me that the Magona have invited us to stay with them, which was a feeling we didn't share mutually, mainly because I was still freaked out by being abducted by something I never believed in or thought was a possibility of being real. So I said nothing to my dad and just remained quiet until the blonde-haired gray aliens walked back into the room and began pushing my bed out with me still on it, thankfully then wearing my clothes, which caused me to scream out to them, asking them where they were taking me, but I would get no response from them. Just my dad telling me to calm down, as if he's been through this before. And his weird actions wasn't like him at all, and was way different than his more serious attitude that I've known him to have my entire life, which told me something wasn't right with him. But I just did what he said, and remained calm, as the blonde-haired aliens, known as the Magona, pushed me off of their ship and onto the ground of the planet Mars, a place I never thought about, yet found myself being transported on. And it's there my dad and I were breathing in air of a foreign world no one thought possible to step foot on. After I was brought to a different room in what I'm assuming was a base or an alien hospital, I was given some sort of purple liquid in a vial they had me drink, which made me feel unusual, as my entire body began to hurt right before it went numb, then going back to normal. And after it was done taking effect, I felt myself again and was no longer weak. Hell, the surgical cut on my head healed as my hair grew back in place. It was truly remarkable. One of the blonde-haired aliens would again telepathically speak to me again and would tell me that we had to go further underground in order to stay safe from the hostile gray aliens that also call Venus home. So underground we went, deep down into the darkened, dimly lit home belonging to the Magona aliens. But making our way there wasn't very nice, because my dad and I would see the heads of gray aliens stuck on pikes, along with bodies of dead greys stuck on the walls like decorations, and I could tell that the Magona hated them strongly. But thankfully, the horrifying sight of the dead aliens would be over once we walked into a huge room, where a blonde female alien sat in a throne-like chair in the middle of the room, where she was surrounded by what I'm assuming was guards who was armed with some type of high-tech weapons, and it was there where both my father and me would be introduced to her, as they telepathically told us that she was their leader, and that she was the one that gave birth to all the Magona, and that she has been alive for thousands of years even though she looked young. But our conversation would be cut short once blood-curdling, high-pitched robotic-like screams would come from outside of the room, which turned out to be the Magona aliens who was running from the Greys that infiltrated their underground home and was attacking them. But thankfully, before they got too close to us, we were taken through another door with their female leader that led to the outside and onto another spaceship, where we all got aboard and began flying away. But not before we were spotted by the ships of the Grey aliens, who started following and shooting at us, causing the ship we were on to almost crash multiple times. And they even pursued us away from the planet and into the deep darkness of space, before our ship was able to blow them up before they could further cause damage. And I won't lie, unlike my father who was shouting and cheering, I was scared half to death. And the whole time I was thinking about my mom, my wife, and my kids, and if I'd ever see them again. And my dad's actions made me angry, since he didn't seem to share the same thoughts as I did. It was like he was a completely different person, a stranger that I did not know. I sat down in the corner of the flying saucer, where I tried to calm myself down and wrap my head around everything happening. I mean, it was terrifying to wake up on a ship full of blonde-haired aliens, and even more scary to know that they abducted me in order to cure me of illnesses I didn't know I had. And on top of that, we were being hunted and attacked by Grey aliens for reasons unknown to me. Well, at least that was before Arona, the female Magona leader, told me the reason, and it was disturbing. Without moving her mouth, Arona would tell me that the Grey aliens came to her planet thousands of years ago, where they began abducting her people, who they would never see again. And one day the Greys would just start attacking them for their resources, and haven't stopped since. Everything Arona told me about the Grey aliens only had me wanting to return to my planet more than ever, which was a feeling my father did not seem to share with me, and I would soon find out why. As I began to argue with my father, something unexpected yet unbelievable would occur, and that's when Arona would touch my dad's shoulder, causing him to dissolve into nothing, which in fact had me scream out in horror, before she would place her hands on my shoulders as she told me that it wasn't really my dad, and that he is safe back on my planet in the area where they abducted me at, and that the thing that had been with me since I woke up in the strange room was just a clone to help me keep calm and relaxed, and also try and convince me to stay with the Magona on their planet. But she could see that I did not want to, so they will return me to the very spot they took me from. I was left speechless. I couldn't utter a single word, so I just remained quiet as I walked back over and sat in the corner in the ship. And it is there where I would sit until I found myself waking up on the ground in the middle of the forest in the pitch-black darkness of night, as I would again hear my father screaming out my name as he ran up to me, while having tears pour out of his eyes, which is something I've never seen him do. And it's there he would immediately tell me what took place once the UFO hovered over us. As my dad wiped his tears, he would tell me that a bright beam would appear over me and lift me up towards the saucer, right as a blonde-haired gray man appeared in front of him, where he would cut off a piece of my dad's hair before being beamed back up into the spaceship that then shot up towards the sky incredibly fast, and that I was gone for only 30 minutes before he would then see the spaceship return and the bright beam lower me back to the ground, just a few feet away from our campsite. Well, I went on to inform my dad about everything that happened to me once I came to on the ship, but made sure to leave out the part about his weird acting clone that I'm sure they took a piece of my father's hair to create, and my story made my father freaked out about me being in a different world than ours. We both left the woods that night swearing to never mention what happened to me to anyone, out of fear of our government, and we returned home hoping to never see another UFO again.